What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joe Hatagwa from Authentic African. I spent the last 8 years investing and traveling around Africa, and I spent 4 years living in West Africa between Sierra Leone and Ghana. And if you want to know about the 7 business ideas in Africa that nobody's talking about, then this is the video for you. All right. Welcome to Pan-African Perspectives. This is your live stream where we talk about all things pertaining to Africa and advancing the continent. I will say that I focus on 3 things in general, right? Connecting the diaspora and the folks living on the continent. And also, we want to help people do 3 things, right? Visit, move, and invest on the continent. Lots to talk about today. If you guys can hear me, give me a thumbs up so I know you can hear me, and also let me know where you're watching from. Maserati Levante says, I want an investment for 100 hectares in Africa. Okay. Abundant Wealth Reiki, what's up? Says, I'm from Sierra Leone. Hey, what's up? Abundant Wealth Reiki? What's up? Mostly for food export is what Maserati's talking about doing. Okay. Well, we're going to talk about a couple of different kinds of businesses here. Norima is watching from Chicago. Festus is watching from, didn't say where, but you said you could hear me. Lisa said you could hear me. Okay. Maserati's talking about doing corn and tomatoes. Maserati got a lot of ideas. What about you guys on YouTube? That is my cousin calling me. Sorry, cuz I am on a live stream, so I'm going to have to call you back. All right, so we got Lenora watching from Maryland. What's up, Lenora? So today I'm going to be reviewing 7 business ideas that honestly can make you money in Africa right now. Now, obviously, Africa is 54 countries. Somebody reminded me of that last week as if I was unaware. So I do know that there are different business climates and different countries. For example, right, there are 36 states in Nigeria, right? 200 million people in Nigeria, 219 million people, they say. Almost 30 million people in Ghana, right? A country like Sierra Leone, which I talk about frequently because my family's from there. I spend a lot of time there. I rep it every day, as you can see on my wrist. Close to between 7 and 9 million people, right? So every country has their own populations. They have their own understanding of business. Their business environments are different. They have their own challenges, right? There are so many different things to take into consideration. What we're going to talk about today are businesses that could widely be useful across the continent, because where businesses offer the most value is businesses that provide a solution to a challenge. And many of the challenges that we see are the opportunities we are going to discuss today. All right. So again, every country is a little bit different. So you're obviously, if you're thinking about moving to the continent of Africa, if you're planning to visit, you're planning to invest in a business, you want to do your research on the local environment before you start putting money into anything. Shout out to Mr. Kai Kai. He was the one who was calling, but I like that he joined the live stream. What's up, sir? Kwame says, hi, sir, and everyone. I am tuning in from the UK. What's up, Kwame, from the UK? Abundant Wealth is living in the UK currently, but planning to relocate to Ghana. Shout out to you. Maserati is still got a lot of stuff that they're mentioning. They got stuff going on in Nigeria. Shout out to Maserati. All right, cool. So let's get into it, right? So we're going to talk through 7 business ideas on the continent that really are no-brainers, and that's only if you've lived on the continent, right? So we're going to get through all of these in just a moment. First, I need to load them up because I've been on calls all afternoon. And to be honest with you, it's been a little bit busy, so I haven't been able to get through all of this. So let me load these up really quickly. But I want to give you guys a chance to guess what some of these business ideas might be. I want to hear from you guys if you guys have some business ideas that you think will work. And you guys are getting sneak peeks of them every 2 seconds ago as I'm uploading them to the site. So you might already have some ideas of what you just are seeing right now. But I want to hear from you guys on some ideas that you guys have on businesses that you think will work on the continent, because I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. There's a lot of folks who come to the continent with an idea without actually thinking about what's going to work. I've talked to some people, and you should hear some of the ideas that people come with. And you ask them if they've ever done any research, if they've been on the ground, and the answer is almost always no. So even if you find any of these interesting, just remember that you need to do your due diligence first. Do not just come here go to the continent. I should say come here. I'm in the North America at the moment. But don't just go to the continent and start a business without really thinking through what works for your particular country that you're going to, your particular skill set, because there are going to be things that work in some places, don't work in other places. There are going to be times where you are perfectly suited to do that business, and there are going to be times where you're not. And so I just encourage everybody to be entrepreneurs, but also do what makes sense for your skill set. You do not want to come to the continent offering businesses and services to people who don't need them, and if you aren't the person to do it, because it's going to be very difficult to close business. So let's start with the first one. And that is, shout out to Self-Made watching from Florida. A mobile car wash is a low startup, high demand. Oh, and by the way, let me be very clear. These are coming from a gentleman who has an Instagram page, who I've been following for quite some time. I saw some of these and I thought these were really great. So his name is Derek. Let me actually share his page with you guys. And, I shout him out because, he shares a lot of good insight on investing on the continent. And ping him in his DMs and let him know that I want to bring him on the live stream at some point. But I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and I'm going to show you his page so you guys get a chance to see him. So he has a podcast called Connected Minds, and he has a page for it. And his name is Derek Abeti. He works on self-development and businesses in Africa. He talks, so 7 business ideas no one talks about in Africa. And so that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to go through one of his posts that he talked about. And I've done some extensive research. I've also been on the continent myself, and I've seen the challenges that some of these solve, and then other ones that I may or may not agree with. So let's get into the first one. And that's a mobile car wash. Low startup, high demand. People want clean cars. No excuses. So a mobile car wash is an interesting one. Now, here is why it matters. Access to water can be challenging for some. And some people don't want to go drive and sit somewhere to get their car washed. And so it would be great if you could come to them and wash their car. The challenge here is having the water to do it, having the power to power that water to spray the car. So not every country this is going to be something that works in, right? This is something that's going to work in specific countries where access to water is easy, and the places you're going likely are going to have access to water and electricity. It's much harder to run a business like this if you don't have power, and you'll find that as a constant across all of these. So that would mean you would have to have a portable generator to go along with you in order to offer this mobile car wash to do like power cleaning. If you just want to wash and use buckets to rinse off the car, you can do that. But again, you are still going to need to have water to do so. You're going to have to determine how much it's going to cost for labor, how much you're going to charge, what is going to make sense to offer the service, who your customers are going to be. But I do think this is a viable business. It is going to be a low margin business. It's not one where you're going to go get rich doing, and there are going to be many costs associated with it. You're going to have to pay for fuel to get there. You're going to have access to water. You're going to have to potentially fire up a generator if you're going to have to use like a power washer. So there are going to be costs associated with doing this business to even get started. So This is a business that could be a low overhead business if you do it right, but there are going to be some costs associated with getting started. So what do you guys think about that? Let me know what you guys think about the mobile car wash idea. Next is portable phone charging stations. So you set up where power cuts are common. You charge phones, and sorry, there's the infinite scroll going on the bottom of the screen there that I want to get off the screen. So apologies for that. I can't remember how you get it on the screen or off the screen. So give me a second to get that off. There it is. Okay. You charge phones, they pay you. So I've seen plenty of these in many different countries. I've seen them Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone. And really, of course, again, you have to have a generator to operate something like this in a place where, excuse me, power is infrequent, right? Because the only way that something like this works is if you have a power supply. So whether it's a generator or this particular image is using solar, which is a little bit easier to operate if you have a solar battery, and you can charge all of the devices with a solar battery. It's pretty easy to set up. It's not expensive at all. And as long as you have a way to lock up everybody's phones, they can trust that they can leave their phones with you. And, you know, you have someone at the station that can manage this. This is also a business that you can start. This is a business like the car wash business that operates at scale to really make any real money. This is not something that you're going to expect to make a ton of money from, because you got to think about it. The people who are charging their phone with you don't have a generator or don't have a solar panel at their place of business or where they live. And so if they're coming to charge their phone with you, that means they do not have a significant amount of income to spend. So that means that you're not going to be able to charge a lot, which means that your revenues are going to be low. In terms of return on investment, I don't have numbers on return on investment, unfortunately, Andy, for these particular businesses. I'm only just speaking to the challenges that they solve. It's really hard to say return on investment because every country is different. Every need is different, right? So you'd have to look at each country individually to determine if this is something that is viable for that country and if this is something that you can offer. I've seen people charge, you know, the equivalent to like $1 for a day to leave your phone there to charge, and you come back later and pick it up, or less, right? And so, I mean, we're talking about if you have 15 different charging portable charging elements, and you're charging $1 per person, and maybe you have 10 to 15 people a day, that's $10 to $15 a day. As you can see, even if, you know, I do some quick math, that's less than $150 a week, which is less than, you know, 150 is 300. That's about $600 a month. That's not a lot of money, and you have to pay people back, right? So this would only work at scale. If you have 7, 10 of these locations minus your costs, that's where something like this starts to make sense for you, if you want to really make your return on your investment. Daniel's asking if he can host me on a podcast. You absolutely can, depending on what the podcast is about. Daniel, please send me a message to the email that was scrolling on your screen earlier, and I would be more than happy to review what it is that you talk about, and yeah, maybe potentially make it happen. So you can email me at that email, authenticafricanlife@gmail.com. I do love to talk to folks about what they're up to. And yeah, you can definitely interview me about my thoughts and things that I know from living on the continent, investing and traveling around the continent. By the way, I do not like heavy overhead businesses, meaning I prefer not to have risk in my businesses. So to be honest with you, I wouldn't do myself the mobile car wash business, and I wouldn't do the portable phone charging stations, because you have to trust an individual to be at that station to not steal anybody's phones, or, you know, there's liability there when somebody's giving a phone to you, and phone stealing happens quite a bit on the continent. And so, you know, this is something that, you know, you just don't, I don't like the idea of having a lot of liability on me for things that I cannot control. So the first two aren't ones that I would do, but there are ones that people, you know, are recommending. So Pro Woman has a good point. Generally, selling to low-income locals, volume scale is needed for profitability. That's why most repat businesses aren't targeting locals. Very, very good point. I will say most repats, expats, diaspora, whatever you want to call those of us who move to the continent and who spend a lot of time on the continent, many of us deal with other folks like us who are traveling and visiting the continent and are looking for things that they're used to having where they're coming from and offering those products and services there on the continent. The reason for that is what was just described here, right? For example, the average income of a Ghanaian is about $70 a month. The average income in Sierra Leone and also the minimum wage in Sierra Leone is about $50 per month. And there are numbers that, for example, in Portugal, for instance, which, they're not known as being a wealthy country, but their lowest minimum wage is $800 per month, right? So you compare that to the 75 and the 50, or the 70 and 50 I just mentioned, Ghana and Sierra Leone respectively. You have to think about that if you have a business like one of these two businesses that I just described. So first was the mobile car wash. Second was the charging stations, the mobile charging stations. So just keep in mind that, yes, you do need massive scale to generate any kind of significant income if you're doing anything like this. Next is waste recycling center. Waste isn't just a problem, it's an untapped revenue source. Turn waste into cash. Now, most countries have local municipalities and even private companies that offer waste management services. If you can partner with the government and get a government grant, or and the government does it, you work as almost like an NGO, non-government organization, doing this on behalf of a government, there you can see a significant amount of income that you can get from it, because you're getting paid from, or maybe not an NGO necessarily, because if you want to be for profit and you don't want to have to deal with the the idea of being like a kind of a not-for-profit kind of business, then you can do public-private partnerships with a government who will basically have you do this on their behalf, and then the government pays you. So that is where you can get a really interesting business. And I know of a business in Sierra Leone right now that is partnering with the government. I know another business that is working on an MOU with the government right now of Sierra Leone to do waste management. And so this is something that is useful, helpful, and can pay you pretty well if you're working with a government that has a need for it and is willing to spend money on something like this. Waste management and recycling is a challenge. Again, many of us who come from the diaspora, I was disheartened by the fact that, everything is plastic, even though most plastics are single use anyway, and the recycling of plastics is a whole nother conversation for another time. Some are multi-use, and it would be good to be able to recycle some of those, or recycle some of the boxes that people use, or other kinds of paper bags that people use, right? It'd be great to be able to recycle those and make them available for other things. Most people just throw them away. There are not a lot of people in the countries that I've been to and where I've spent time, not a ton of people recycle. In fact, in New York City, it had to be a mandate by a former mayor, Bloomberg, to force recycling, because it's just not something people naturally do. It's a new behavior that you have to get people to get involved with and do. So if in fact you have a public-private partnership with the government, though, this could be something that could be potentially lucrative. Next, we talking about local courier services. Now, this is where we can start talking about some things. Because you can have one driver that could do multiple deliveries, right? And so this is where you could potentially save on, on some of your own additional costs and on overhead, if you have one person that's efficient. Now, again, the thing about local courier services is people do need stuff moved quickly. But in Ghana, for instance, they have Uber, where you could just use the Uber delivery option. right? Nigeria, same thing. Many countries that have Uber already. But how about a country like Sierra Leone, which doesn't have Uber currently? Maybe a local courier service would make sense here, especially if you have a person who owns a bike or you own the bike and you have a driver that's reliable. This makes sense. I know 5 people who sell products, and I know 3 restaurants who do deliveries. None of them have, actually, only one of them has a regular bike person that they use for all of their deliveries. And so this is something that you could have one or a couple of different bikes and a couple of different riders doing that. But of course, you have to pay for fuel and you have to pay for the bike riders. And you have to ensure that, of course, they're competent and they're people that you can trust to get the job done, and they won't run off with the merchandise that has to be delivered, right? So just think about that. But I think this is something that I see. I like the idea of doing business with businesses, right? People who already have a business in place, an established business and a customer base, and all you're doing is helping them get their product or to a customer. So of the first 4, the last 2 I like a little bit better. The recycling business, again, because if you can get a partnership with the government, then it can work out. Still very difficult to do, and not everybody wants to prioritize waste management. So that's one of the challenges there. And then as it pertains to the courier service, I'm a little bit more inclined to think about a courier service business, because the last mile and local delivery is a real challenge on the continent. And so this is something that you could actually get into and offer some real value to people and make some things happen. All right. Poultry feed production. Farmers will pay for quality feed, control supply, and profit. Now, why do I like something like poultry feed production or other kinds of feed production? Like I said, you already have an established business as a customer, and now you're offering something to them. So that ensures that you continue to have business because you just need to do business to business marketing, which you have less people you need to talk to. They have to do the work of getting their eggs and their chicken sold to direct to consumers, which we talked about this before. $40,000 investment, potentially for up to $200,000 a year in returns. That is top line revenue, before you take out costs and everything else. But that is a difficult business to get up and running and going, and you need to have partners on the ground and a number of other things. If you can do small scale production of feed, then you could potentially offer this to people who have farming businesses, right? So this is also another business that could be interesting. Farming is growing on the continent. There are many countries where the presidents and or their parliaments are investing in farming. This is going to continue to grow. And so offering services and products to those folks, I think, is actually really, really an important thing to be doing. So I would not, this is not a business that I would get into. I think the local courier service is one that it seems a little bit more interesting for me. Oh, I just uploaded the same thing. Let me get you guys another image file. So that was the poultry. Poultry was number 5. Now let's look at small scale refrigeration. Wait, what's going on? Oh, okay. I don't know what's going on. My yeah, something was going on with the platform. Okay. So small scale cold storage. Food spoils fast, of course. Offer affordable storage to farmers and traders. This is smart, right? But again, you need to have a way to keep the power running, right? So that means you could do one of 2 things. You can buy refrigerators, buy solar panels, and offer that, or so like, for example, what I saw once, which I thought was incredibly smart, was outside of a a supermarket, there was somebody selling produce, right? They were selling fruits and vegetables. Now, it was hot that day, and I picked up one of their apples, and I'm like, oh, this is going to go bad tonight. So I'm not going to buy this apple. And so one thing that makes sense is to be able to offer cold storage for folks like that, so that apple can last a little bit longer, a couple days longer. You know, mangoes can last longer, watermelon, right? All the different fruits, and then all your vegetables, right? Because, you know, they're freshly picked, but you know, if they're not moved that day and they're not moved the next day, then they go bad. And so you want to be able to have small scale cold storage. And what you could do is go to a market area where there's a bunch of market women, and you can all have them to pay rent to rent your cold storage from you while, you know, throughout the day while they're working to get customers, right? So instead of it having to sit out in the hot sun all day, you could have it in the fridge and make it available. I think this is a really smart business. I like business to business. For those of you who are new to business on the continent, I like business to business on the continent because they're already established customer bases, and you know, you don't have to do as much market research on how people's consuming habits are, and try to think about how you need to price it for their consuming habits, and think about how to get into the mindset of a customer, and constantly think about customer acquisition cost. Whereas if you do business to business, you talk to a business, you understand their needs, you provide them with a service. There's a lot less people you need to talk to make more money. So I like the idea of doing business to business as opposed to direct to consumer businesses. So I don't know what you guys see on screen right now, because as I'm looking at Instagram, it looks like small scale cold storage is not what's on screen. Poultry production and poultry feed production is still on screen. What are you guys seeing on screen right now? Let me know. Do you guys see small scale cold storage right now? Let's try that again. Hopefully you do. But yeah, so offering that I think is going to be huge. All right, so a couple of things. Farquan says constant black backup solar power is a must investment in Ghana. And it's not even as bad in Ghana as it might be in other countries, in West Africa in particular, as of course. So yeah, for sure. Pro Woman also says the diaper yard in Accra gave next day delivery and hassle-free returns for baby products I bought. The guy I put through school in Ghana, Local Courier, gave reliable delivery, 5 Black Star service. There you go. Shout out to the diaper yard. Pro Women's promoting the diaper yard here, but I think that that's an important thing. So they had their own courier, and they offered next day delivery and hassle-free returns. I mean, you have service here, and then you also have they were smart about how they handled their logistics. So really smart. Okay, cool. So cold storage was on the screen, so that's good. So small scale cold storage was the next, and then last but not least is drumroll please. Wait till. Okay, here we go. Event equipment rentals, chairs, speakers, tent. People rent, you can collect the cash. Now, I like this, but again, this is a direct to consumer. But here's why I like this. People like to enjoy themselves on the continent. Weddings, funerals, birthdays, right? People like to have events at home or at a hall or somewhere, and they want to be able to rent equipment and make it easy to set up and take down. And so this is good for people who want to party, right? And you can work with businesses too. So the interesting thing about this particular business we're talking about here is you can offer these services to individuals and businesses, right? People who want to throw a party, and a business who needs it for themselves, right? They may want to throw a party. I remember I went to an event for a company I was working for, and we did like our anniversary, the company anniversary party, and we needed a bunch of chairs and tables, and they brought them in. We didn't have that in-house. Even though we had chairs and tables in our main office, we didn't have it in-house for where we were setting this up. And so we had to bring in tables and chairs, and that's an easy win for a business if you can offer that service and offer those products to people, right? There are many other businesses that you can do around parties. I know mobile bartending services, etc. And we'll do more of these kinds of conversations. But yeah, any other questions, comments, concerns on any of this? Because that's my true thoughts on all of these. And again, you can go to Derek's page and you can see more about what he's talking about in terms of businesses. I think it's really interesting to kind of get an idea of what businesses can be lucrative, what makes sense, what I've seen working, what I've seen not working. Because yeah, I've definitely seen folks attempt this and not have much success because it is difficult to trust folks, to manage a lot of these businesses that we talked about. Mark Hansen says, what about a transportation business? I want to own a trucking business. What do you mean trucking though, right? Do you mean trucking like trucking in America? Because yeah, I mean, look, if you can, it's all about finding the customers with trucking and transportation. Now, transportation is an interesting one because people do this all the time. I've seen this happen a ton. So what I've seen people do in Sierra Leone, and I've done this as a passenger, is if I'm going to Bo, 3.5 hours away, which is they call it the second city. It's the second largest city in Sierra Leone. My grandfather was chief there, right? You might have heard me talk about this before. My great uncle was too, and my great grandfather was as well. But anyway, you go to Bo, Kakua Kingdom, and getting there, it might be difficult. There aren't a lot of regional transportation services that are really reliable. And so what people will do is you'll go to this specific area and you'll try to catch a NGO vehicle, somebody who's going that direction anyway, and will pick you up for about $5 to take you 4 hours. $5 to $6 to take you about 4 hours. It's not bad. And it's something that you can basically, as a business, you could pick people up, bring them back every day, and your costs are the cost of the driver and the fuel cost. And so as long as you can factor all of that in, it makes sense, right? The question on this was Selfmade said, what's the one with the lowest cost to start? Of all of these that we talked about, right? The one with the lowest cost to start, this thing is giving all kinds of issues. Hold on one second. I don't know what's going on. Let me get out of there and get the speaker view going. Okay, there we go. Remove that. The lowest one to start, to be honest, as I'm looking through all of these, oh, I see what's happening. The platform is just having an issue, and so I'm just gonna have to take stuff off the screen. I mean, it's hard to say, right? I mean, all of them have startup costs, but the lowest one to start is either going to be the mobile. Nope, the lowest one to start is going to be the courier business. Well, the mobile refrigeration might be low to start too. I mean, the courier business, you have to either get a bike and get an employee. With the cold storage, you have to get refrigerators and get a solar, right? Which is going to be more expensive, the solar to run the refrigerator. Anything else, the poultry feeding, you still have to grow and it takes time. So, I mean, they're all going to have startup costs, right? So just keep that in mind. They're all going to have startup costs, and you're going to have to decide which one makes the most sense to you. Andy G says tool rentals for construction, for example, concrete mixer, concrete pump, scaffold, etc. Andy G, you are absolutely right about that. This is a conversation I've been having with a number of people, and I know somebody who has a business idea that they're working on, so I'm not going to say what they're doing, but it's around construction. And if you can save time, energy, and effort, you can really get things going. So yeah, absolutely. Tools for construction. And the thing is, think about this, guys. Here's the thing you have to think about, right? Africa right now is like the gold rush. And, I use this analogy about the gold rush all the time because I think it's really important. Now, the gold rush of the 1840s, 1849 or so to be exact. That's why you have the San Francisco 49ers, just for those of you who aren't aware. That's why their color is gold on their helmet. If you were living in that time, there were a bunch of people rushing to San Francisco, to California, to go dig up gold. They say between 10 and 15% of the income generated during the gold rush was actually from people finding gold. Very little of it came from people finding gold. Most of it came to the people offering services to the people who were digging for gold. So that meant Levi Strauss made a significant amount of money because they were offering overalls to people. For whatever reason, people like to wear overalls when they're sifting for gold. The people who are selling tools like wheelbarrows, shovels, sifters, they made a significant amount of money. Banks like Wells Fargo came out during that time and really significantly built a business around banking. And so if you offer services to people who are going to dig for gold, right? So people who are moving to the continent, or people who are already on the continent, right? But the continent of Africa, actually, it's fitting because there is gold on the continent, right? Underneath the ground, there is plenty of gold. There are a lot of natural resources on the continent of Africa, and many people are going there to get access to those resources, whether it's human resources or physical natural resources, raw earth materials. And so what do you want to do? You want to offer products and services to those people. Those people need houses, so they need to build houses. So if you're going to offer services, you may want to offer, like was mentioned before, offering tool rentals for those folks. Those people like to party. So a party rental service. Actually, I should say the party rental service might be the lowest upfront cost to begin with, because you can get a couple parties off the ground with just a few tables and chairs, which don't cost that much to spend. And then you can make your money back and buy more tables and chairs and more cloth and all other things that you want to add later. But I think, probably the party rental business would be one. But yeah, so back to the idea, the concept of the gold rush, right? There's so many people moving to the continent, right? So how do you offer them products or services? And that's what I'm doing, right? With everything that I'm doing with Authentic African, is I'm offering products and services for those who are planning to go to the continent and move to the continent. Pro Woman says, thoughts on student housing targeting college towns and areas around universities, etc. I think the challenge with this is most people can't even pay their college fees, right? Their school fees. What you'll find is like people don't get their diplomas or their degrees and all that kind of stuff because they still owe money to the university. I know a university that was supposed to have a field trip, but they wouldn't go on the field trip unless all the students paid, because that was what was going to cover the cost of all of them going on this field trip. So I would say when it comes to a business like offering housing to the college population, you got to keep in mind that population is already probably struggling to pay for housing currently. A lot of people commute from home. Now it depends on the country, it depends on the city, right? So, I think if you can pair up with a university that is, used to, ensuring that everything is paid for, and maybe the university the university pays you and charges their students for housing, then maybe that would work. I think it's just challenging when you are the one who plans to charge students, because again, you now have to deal with the students' income, and you're already talking about the minimum income or less, right? Because these are students. Farquan Ali says, I'm considering a culture cafe somewhere on the continent or a small indoor food market? Yeah, I mean, I think do your research, right, on a country where you would consider doing this and what the needs are in that country, right? I would say don't start any business just because you think it's a good idea. You want to start a business based on the needs on the continent. I'm very big on watching pitches to people who offer investments to companies, and many companies are out there being a product in search for a problem, and you cannot be a product or a service in search for a problem. You need to be a product or a service that is a solution to a problem. If you might notice, I went through each of these business ideas earlier, speaking to a problem that those businesses would solve. You have to know if a culture cafe would be serving a need in the specific region you're looking at. If it wouldn't be, I wouldn't offer it in that region. And if you can't find anywhere on the continent where it would work, then I wouldn't offer that service, because you want to ensure that you're solving a problem with the business that you're considering, not just going with an idea you have if you haven't been. And I don't know, Farquan, how often you go and how many times you've done the research into this. But I'm always just recommending that, you make sure you pay attention to whether or not there's a need for these services. I don't know anywhere that I've been. I think that I'd have to know a little bit more about what a culture cafe is, what you mean by that. But you kind of want to be able to find a market, and you have to have a total addressable market of enough people that'll make sense. Bertram says, what about heavy equipment service in Sierra Leone? Yes, heavy equipment service would be great. I remember when I was looking to get an excavator, that thing that just like, I don't know if that's whatever it's called. It's not an excavator, but it just digs and claws out. I heard they can charge as much as $1,000 per day to use that. $1,000 per day. Now, this is something that probably is about 15 years old. It's long paid off, and they charge $1,000 per day because there aren't many of those products available. Andy G says, start small, no more than $1,000, adjust the business model, then scale up once the business model works. Mark Hansen says, I'm working on getting a commercial truck in the United States. Hope to have 3 trucks in 4 years. I was wondering if I could do delivery or transportation business. You could. You'd want to partner with companies that have like e-commerce businesses, like Jumia, for example, my former employer, which needs last mile delivery. So yeah, those kinds of things for sure could be, but you'd have to do the market research first. Self-made says, I'm thinking about business consulting business. I have a small business now. Yeah, I mean, as long as you can show why you're uniquely qualified and why you can help a business with your consulting service, I say why not. Just keep in mind that a lot of times people aren't always willing to pay for things unless they see an immediate need for it. So consulting might be a tough one to to break into and to do, but it could be lucrative if you find the right clients and you know exactly how to market yourself and your services properly. All right, guys, I am parched. I'm trying to hydrate. But yeah, here's what I would say. Do your research before you start any endeavor on the continent. Make sure if you're going to try to do it remotely, you have someone close to you who is operating the business on your behalf. You do not want to be in a position where you have someone operating the business on your behalf and you don't trust them, or they're not going to be doing a job that you can be proud of. I just realized that I was talking to you guys through the laptop speakers and not even the microphone. But I hope you guys could hear me well. My microphone is plugged in, but I can't seem to find the audio input for it. Interesting. Oh, no, I'm talking to you guys through the microphone. Never mind. All right, cool. All right, so one last thing I always like to say, don't forget to check out AuthenticAfrican.com Those are products that are made on the continent of Africa. They are ethically sourced and handmade products all around the continent, making them available to the diaspora. For right now, it's available in the United States. We'll be launching Europe before too long. I don't want to say exactly when. Okay, cool. Well, guys, I hope you found this useful. We'll do more like this. If you found this useful, we'll do more like this. Love to hear your ideas. Talk about more ideas that are out there. Um, more than happy to help you vet them in real time. Make sure you guys think about them. And by the way, I don't want to be discouraging if I say that it might be difficult to start a business or I'm not sure it's a good idea. I am just one person. But I am a person who has spent 8 years investing and visiting and traveling around the continent and 4 years living on the continent. Now I've only gone to 6 countries, so there are going to be places where I have blind spots. And so, but I do talk to people. I've spoken to people in across 20 or so countries, all the major markets. And so I do have a little bit of an idea of some of the business environment in those countries. And so these are things that I'm speaking to you based on my experience. So yeah, Pro Woman says this is very useful. Thanks. You're welcome. I'm glad you find it to be so. All right, guys. That's it for now. We are going to be back hopefully on Thursday. We had to postpone last Thursdays because my co-host is a little under the weather, and we are hoping that we can bring her back on. I'm hoping that she's feeling better by Thursday. But we'll figure it out. We're gonna find a way to get you guys the news weekly. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the support. Self-Made says thanks for everything you do. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for supporting. You guys, without you guys, obviously I wouldn't be here. And listen, for those of you who've been around for a long time, Pro Women is one of those people. Mark Hansen has been around for a while. Manelik, I know you're watching. Manelik from like almost day one, right? When there was like 8 people on the live stream max. Sometimes it would be 100 views, 80 views on these live streams. I want to thank all of you guys for sticking around through the whole process. Me and Ghana moving to Sierra Leone, coming back to the States, getting real equipment like microphones and equipment upgrades. So you guys have stuck with me, and I think this is offering a lot of insight to people. And so if you can just forward this to anybody it's free to do. Give a thumbs up. That's also free to do. And if you know anybody who, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified every time a new video comes out. All right. So with that, thanks for watching. I will see you guys all on Thursday. And if not Thursday, we'll see you guys on Sunday. All right, guys. See you guys soon.